So my wife and I are separated. We really came together and said, hey, you know what? Let's try living life in our own places and let's see how that goes. So I moved into my own apartment the end of February 2025. I'm feeling good about life. I'm feeling good about myself. My self-worthy meter is high, right? Because I started to realize everywhere in the Bible, you didn't read any stories about Jesus and his worthiness or not having any. He was just confident in all he did because he knew his father was God and that he was taken care of. So I started to say, I want to live my life like Jesus lived his life. I want to lead like Jesus. I want to love like Jesus. I want to spend my life really caring about people like Jesus did. And so I really went into that mindset, and I would start my day out with a Bible, a prayer, coffee. And on May 20th, 2025, I was sitting in my living room with my door open. The weather was good. There was a breeze coming in. I have a cat. Two cats, they like to go outside. So they were doing their thing out on the patio. I'm reading my Bible, and all of a sudden I hear a yell. It's like, "Rah!" And I'm like, what is that? And I live across from a busy area, so it's not uncommon to hear a lot of noise. I hear it again. I'm like, what is that? This was first thing in the morning. I always do my Bible study right before I would sign on for work. So I hear it over and over. I finally get up and I look outside, and there is a man across the street, and he's walking with a cane. Looks like he has a white shirt on, tan pants, and he's just yelling, just, ah. And I'm like, why is he doing that? But then it's not my business. And I'm trying to stay out of other people's business, because I am the type that if you involve me in your problems, you involve me in your business, or I just accidentally get involved, I'm now in it. I'm going to resolve it. I'm going to solve it. I'm going to take you to the very end, the goal line. So I'm like, nope. God has already pressed it on my heart to stay out of people's business. So I let it go. I still hear it. And then I see he's walking by people, and no one's even stopping to say, are you okay? Do you need something? So I'm standing up in my living room and I'm like, no, I'm not going. God pressed it upon my heart. Get some clothes on. Let's go across the street. And I said, okay. In my mind, I said, no. In my heart, I said, let me take a shower, because I don't like to go anywhere without taking a shower. So God's like, we're not even taking a shower. I was like, fine. I went and put some clothes on. And then I have an electric scooter that I like to ride around this area, right? And I was like, I'll just take the electric scooter. It's easy to get out, go over there, and I'll come right back. God pressed it upon my heart. Nope, get in your vehicle. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. And then God's like, just get in your vehicle. So I did. And I drove over across the street. And I found the man that was yelling. I found him in between two buildings. And I pulled in, and I walked over, and he was sitting on a bench. And I said, hi, my name is Carrie. Are you okay? And he said, hi, my name's David. I believe in Jesus Christ. I said, okay, me too. And I sat down on the bench next to him, and I said, David, I can hear you yelling across the street. My apartment's across the street, and I heard you yelling as you were walking. Are you okay? And he said, yeah, I'm okay. And he said, I need coffee. Well, in my mind, I thought, well, me too, because I was drinking my coffee when I heard you yelling, and I had to leave my coffee. So I was like, me too, David. I need coffee too. Can I go get you some coffee? And he's like, and a donut. like, okay, I can do a donut, right? I can get you a coffee and a donut. And I said, why don't you sit right here and I'll go find a place. Now, again, I haven't eaten donuts in a while, so I don't know where a closed donut shop was. So I just said, David, you know what? Why don't you just come with me? Let me make this clear. David was a small man. Okay. He was very small with a cane. If I needed to take him, I could. Okay. So I'm like, David, why don't you just come with me and we'll go find a donut shop and coffee. So we finally get David to the car because again, he walks with a cane. So he walks a little slow. We get him buckled up. And as soon as we pull out of that area, 2 cop cars come in. I thought to myself, how sad that instead of asking someone in distress if they need something, we call the cops. That's sad. So as we're driving out, I said, David, I think those cops are here for you. And he's like, that's okay. We got away. I'm like, I don't know what we got away from, but cool, let's go. Right? Because now I'm in it. Now David's got me in it. So we drive down, and down the way a little bit is a McDonald's. So I thought maybe more substantial food would be better for him. So we pull into McDonald's. I said, David, are you okay if we go to McDonald's? I really don't know where a donut shop is, and we'll spend half the morning driving around trying to find one. And he's like, yeah, I like McDonald's. So we go in and we get out of the car. And let me say this about McDonald's. The nostalgia of going to the counter and ordering your food like when you were a kid, I miss that. Because it took me a long time to figure out, I don't go to McDonald's, but it took me a long time how to figure out to use the kiosk. And then David was trying to tell me what he wanted, right? He wanted pancakes. He wanted this. And I'm like, yo, I'm trying to figure out this kiosk. Okay. You got to give me a second, David. Right. So I'm trying to figure this out. And finally I get it figured out. So I just want to tell you, McDonald's, go back to the people taking your order. It's so much better. Anyway, David tells me he wants hotcakes with syrup. He wants a sausage McMuffin. And so I'm like, great, whatever you want, David, we're going to get. So I order a coffee and I go sit down, and David's food comes, our coffee comes. And instead of David just diving into his food, he says, hey, wait, you don't want anything? He said, do you want some of my pancakes? And I'm like, oh no, David, I'm fine. I really don't eat this early in the morning, but thank you. Thank you so much for asking about me and if I'm okay. So we start talking, and I ask him, David, why are you out on the streets? What happened? What's wrong? And he said, I am schizophrenic. I'm bipolar, but that's okay because God has me. I said, okay, David. And he said, I like to read the Bible. And I'm like, David, me too. When I heard you yelling, I was reading the Bible. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, my favorite story is of King David. I said, is that how you got your name? And he said, I don't know. I don't know about that, but my favorite story is King David. And he went in to tell some of the story of King David. We're sitting there, and he's shoveling food into his mouth. And I asked him, I said, are you on any medication? He explained about not knowing where his meds were. He lost them somewhere. He said some other things. And then he's like, hey, do you have a couch? And I'm like, yo, wait, David, hold on. We're like on a first date here, right? We're jumping past where we need to be at. Let's just deal with our McDonald's for a second. All right. And so we went back to our conversation, and he told me about some medical issues that he was having and about his mental health. And I knew at that point, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I had to do something. So I had a doctor's appointment to get to. I had a follow-up on something, and I didn't want to miss my appointment. So I'm like, David, listen, I don't know what I'm going to do yet, I really don't. But I know I'm going to figure something out. So I'm going to leave you here. I'm going to give you some money, and they cannot make you leave if you're buying stuff. So just buy a Coke, buy some fries, just keep buying stuff until I get back, right? And David's like, okay. He's like, how long will you be? David, I don't know. I'm thinking probably an hour and a half. So just hang out here and I promise I'll be back. So I went up to the manager, explained a little bit of the situation, and she put her hand over mine and said, I got you. And made me feel so comfortable about leaving him there, that they wouldn't be mean to him. They wouldn't try to, kick him out. So I went back to my apartment to take a shower and get dressed for my appointment. And man, in that shower, I cried. I cried for this man. To see him, someone so vulnerable out in the streets, but yet so loving and kind, to worry that I wasn't eating something. You can see I could skip a meal or 10. Okay. But he was so concerned that I wasn't eating with him. Not only was I emotional about that in the shower, then I went to fix it mode, right? I'm going to fix David's life because that's what I do, right? I fix things. I've always been that person in my friend group, in my family, where at work, wherever I'm at, that I am a problem solver and people come to me for that. So I have a relative that has some property out in a small town, and I've already moved David out there. Okay. Bought him a tent. He's living outdoors. Like, we're roughing it. Right. Haven't even talked to this person, but I've moved him out there, bought him clothes. I'm coming out every weekend, making sure he's okay. And I feel like they're going to be fast friends. And then David's going to move in their house and all is going to be well. Right. Again, this person that I'm even talking about, I really don't even have a close relationship with. I'm not really even talking that much to them. So why would I even think that they'd be like, yeah, bring your homeless friend out here. That sounds fun. But I was there. I was in it. I was doing it. And then I said, God, I want to do this. Just make this person's heart move to allow this to happen. Right? Getting dressed, going to my appointment. Now, my wife and I are separated, but God's such a loving God. God's such a beautiful God. Because I don't have really a lot of people in my life. I'm going through this transformation on my own. But God said, I'm not going to leave you by yourself, because I know how much that you love your best friend. And even though you're separated and you're both going through your stuff, I'm not going to put you guys too far apart. She had moved into the same apartment complex down the hall. And so I got out of the shower and I ran down there. When I say ran, I mean I walked down there, okay? I quickly got down there as fast as I could. And she had just woke up. And I am coming in all guns a-blazing on level 100. And I tell her the story of David and where he's at. And I tell her what I want to do. Listen, I'm going to my doctor's appointment. When I get back, I want to pick David up, bring him to my apartment, and let him take a shower. And then I'm going to take him out to this person's property. And she's like, no. Have you lost your mind? No, this is a stranger. You don't know what's really going on, and you're manic. You're literally talking 1,000,000 miles a minute. I was like, I am not manic. I'm just listening to God. And I know this is what I'm supposed to do. And she said, you need to calm down. You need to really think this out. And then we'll go from there. Oh, I was mad. I was so mad. How dare you stop me from helping someone that God put in my path? So I leave her apartment and I'm mad and I'm cussing under my breath. I'm walking down the hallway and I'm jeet, 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 right? And I'm really mad. And I get to my car and I'm in it. And listen, where we live, it takes 500 years to get down the parking garage. So I have all that time to think. And as I get out and I'm at the stoplight, I call her and I said, man, you were so right. And for anyone that knows me telling someone else that they are right and I am wrong is very difficult. That's how I knew God was doing work in my heart. For me to admit that I am wrong. So I said, you know what? You're right. It's a crazy idea, but I'm going to figure something out. I think I already have something else, but I want to just think about it for a minute. So I'm going to think while I'm driving and I'll come back to your apartment and let you know what I plan to do. She's like, okay, sounds better. Went to my doctor's appointment. I had figured out where we had used to live. There was a motel there that wasn't in the seedy part of town, wouldn't have people that had a lot of drugs or whatever, for some reason that I was nervous about. And also, I didn't have to put down a credit card. I didn't have to leave all my information. So whatever happened would happen, right? So I made that decision and I came back and I came to my wife's apartment and I said to her, okay, I have a plan. This is what I want to do. And she was so gracious. And she said, that plan sounds awesome. And guess what? I will match however many days you want to get him a room, I will match it. Okay. So now I'm not mad anymore because she's understanding my plight. And not only is she understanding it, she's in it with me. Right. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back and get David. Here's what I plan to do. And then we'll go from there. So I get in my car, I go back to McDonald's and I go inside to get David and he's sitting around the corner and David said, oh, you came back. And I'm like, yeah, of course I came back, David. I said I would. And he's like, okay, let's go. Like he had enough of being there. He's like, let's go. So I said, we got in the car and I said, hey, David, let me tell you what we're going to do. And I told him I wanted to get him a hotel room. He couldn't go there till 3:00. It was still earlier in the day, about noonish. And I said, so it's a beautiful day, David. I'm going to take you to my most favorite park and I'm going to let you hang out there and I'll come back and get you. And then we'll take you to the hotel room. And I'm like, do you mind hanging out at the park? And he's like, no, not at all. I'm fine with that. And in fact, it was such a beautiful day. I was jealous that I couldn't go hang out at the park. So I said, let's get you some waters. And he's like, and orange juice. I'm like, okay, David, and orange juice. So we went next door. There was a 7-Eleven next door. I park in front of the front and I go in. I'm grabbing for the water when I realized I just left a stranger, a homeless man, in my running vehicle to come inside to a store. And by the time I turn around, my vehicle could be gone. And I just felt peace come over me like, don't worry about it. Everything's going to be okay. I went to picking back the waters and the orange juice and went to the front. As I'm walking to the front, I look out because, of course, I'm going to make sure my car's still there. Okay. I felt the sense of peace, but I needed confirmation. Okay. I'm a Virgo. Need to feel it, touch it, see it to make sure it's there. And there was a man standing at the window talking to David. I nearly went into a full-blown panic. I think I hyperventilated for a minute because now I have two strangers at my vehicle with it running. And as I'm turning to look, and I just literally feel pressure on my shoulder, like, that's not your business. So I'm like, okay, God, but it is my car. Again, it's not your business. So I turn around, and when I tell you, I have never stood in line at a 7-Eleven for this long in my life with no one in front of me. This 7-Eleven associate was just doing his job. But man, every time he went to do it, something prevented him from doing it. Whether it was something was wrong with the register, whether it was he was stapling a lottery ticket to a piece of paper and it wouldn't staple. It didn't matter. Something was happening to prevent him from doing his job, and it was taking forever. And I started to panic again. And I'm like, oh my God, please just let this man check me out. Please. Finally, he checked me out. When I turned to go back to the car, the gentleman that was at the window with David was now gone. I didn't want to cause panic. I didn't want to seem alarmed. So when I sat in the car, I said, so David, my voice got higher. I said, so I saw the guy at the window. Everything okay? And he said, oh yeah, everything's fine. He's homeless too. And he said, because you gave me money, I was able to help him out with some money. First I said in my head, I am such an asshole, because all I could think about was them taking my stuff. Instead, David was pulling out the little bit that he had to share it with someone that had less than. So I said, David, you know what? That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be helping each other out. And he said, yeah, that's what God says. So I'm like, all right, we're going to the park, David. So we get on the road, go to the park, and I said, David, where have you been staying at? And he said, well, over in Dallas by Fair Park, and where I'm at is quite a bit of ways from that area. And I'm like, what brought you over here? He said, God tells me where to go. I said, David, and I just shook my head because God tells me where to go. So I dropped David at the park and I let him know, hey, David, I've had an ankle replacement. You have to stay kind of in this area. I can't go hunting for you. So I'll come out here, yell your name, and please come when I get here. And he's like, no problem. And as I was leaving, David says, I love you. And man, I had to turn around and be like, thank you, David. Thank you. So I come home. I got to work a little bit. I got to get a couple of things done. So I did all the things that I needed to do. And now I'm making a list to go to Walmart to pick out David some things to get him through. So I leave my apartment. I go to Walmart. I'm running around Walmart like a crazy lady, throwing things in. And I go back to the park. And as I'm driving down to come into the park area, I see David laying on the ground having the best time ever. When I say I'm not a jealous person, but I was really jealous of how comfortable he was at that park. And you could see he was lifting his head every time a car came. So when I came around the corner, he lifted his head like, oh, she came back. You could see the excitement in his face. So I get out of the car. I'm like, David, let's go. David had taken his shoes, his socks. He had made that park his own. And so he puts on his shoes, he gets his cane, and we're going. And I tell him, okay, David, I'm going to take you to this hotel, and we'll figure out tomorrow. All we're going to do is worry about today. And he said, okay. And I said, I got you some shoes, some pants, some food. And we're going to go check you in. So I checked David in, and I didn't take him in with me to the front. I checked him in, paid for the room. And then I got in the car and I drove around to the side door. And I said to him, David, listen, I got you a smoke. David smoked. I got him a smoking room, but also as an ex-smoker, I preferred to smoke outside. I never preferred to smoke inside. So I was worried that people would mess with him. So I said, David, listen, I got you a smoking room, but in case you want to come outside, take a shower, put on your new clothes. I don't want anybody to be mean to you. And sometimes people are mean to people who are homeless. I don't know why. It just is. And he said, okay. And I said, and if you could just stay in your room, that would make me feel better. It would make me feel more comfortable. So got David in his room. We unpacked his stuff. And I said, oh, David, and maybe nobody else will find this funny but me, but we unpacked all his stuff. And because he said he liked reading the Bible, I purchased him, when I was at Walmart, I purchased him a Bible. Now, the only Bible that they had available was the NIV version, okay? And I don't mind the NIV version, but I handed him the Bible. He said, oh, nah, I'm not reading that. I only read the King James version. And I was like, wait, should I only be reading the King James version? What's happening? What do I do? What do I don't know? Do I not know something? So I said, and he literally threw the Bible on the bed like, bleh. So I'm like, well, David, I can take it back, And so I left him there for the night, gave him my phone number, and I went home. And on my way home, I was like, God, what do I do with David? I don't know what to do. So I pulled into my parking garage, and something reminded me about someone that is very special to me. And this person has had their battle with drugs and whatever else. And so I picked up the phone and I called this person and I said, hey, I need to know about MetroCare. Tell me how it works. Because MetroCare really, really helped this person that means so much to me. And so this person explained the ins and outs of MetroCare, and I'm like, great, thank you, love you, bye. Called MetroCare. Man, I got this fantastic lady on the phone. I asked her all the questions, like, if I bring him in, will y'all see him? Can I stay with him? He doesn't really like doctors. And she was so gracious and kind and answered every question as many times as she need to, and she was like, yeah, you can stay with him as long as he allows it. You can go through the whole process with him. And she's like, but listen, if you don't make an appointment, you are going to be here all day. And I mean all day. And that's just how it is. And I said, no problem at all. Thanks for the help. I appreciate you. We'll see you tomorrow. After this call, after this day, I was emotionally spent. I was done. Came up to my apartment, texted my boss and said, I have something personal to do tomorrow. I'm not going to be at work. So I was emotionally taxed. I went up to my apartment. I had to come down from let's call it my God high, all the emotions that I was going through with just helping this one gentleman. So I finally got to sleep, and the next day I knew I didn't have to get up for work. I was going to go pick up David, and I slept in just a little bit, and I guess I slept a little too long because I woke up to this message from David.
Hi, Carrie. Good morning. Thank you very much. I hope you'll be here. But to bring me up. I love you. Bye. Thank you, man. Bye.
And I was like, ooh, I got to get going. David's already on his way to calling me. And so he's ready to go. Right. And so on my way to the hotel, I rehearsed how I was going to let him know about MetroCare, because I didn't want it to be a frightening thing for him. And we had had the conversation the day before, how doctors were frightening to him and how sometimes they just wanted to give him pills and not really help with the solution. And he didn't really like them. I wanted to get him the best help I could. So I'm rehearsing on the way. I get to the motel and I knock on his door and I hear him yell from the door, Carrie? And I'm like, David, it's me. And he opened the door. He's like, you came back. Yes, David. I said I was going to come back. I'm back. So I almost didn't recognize him because he had shaved, he had taken a shower, he had on new clothes, his hair was done. And I'm like, David, you look sharp. And he said, my shoes don't fit. I said, that's all right, David. That's all right. We can take them back and get you the right size. I had bought him boots because he's in the elements and I thought boots would be perfect for the elements. So we gather up all his stuff. And then I tell him, David, I need to sit and talk to you. And he's like, okay. And I said, go ahead and take a seat. And I said, listen, I want to get you the best care that I can get you. I don't really know what all of that is. All I can go with is what I know. And I know that someone that I love very much has been to MetroCare, and man, the assistance they received was outstanding. In fact, this person has made a complete 180, right? Like a whole different person. And part of that was because of MetroCare. And they help you stabilize your medication. They help make sure that you stay off the substances. They find you housing. There's a lot of things that they do to help you and help all of our communities. And I said, would you be interested in doing that? And he said, yes, I'll go. And I'm like, okay, super happy, right? Because I'm a fixer. So now I have a solution to David's problem. So I'm like, all right, David, I got to get gas. Let's go. And he said, can we get donuts? Yes, David, today we can get donuts. So I go to QT and we are inside, and David has a habit of when he walks in and he just yells, hi, how are you? Hi, how are you? It could be very off-putting for some people, but I thought it was very endearing. And also, I didn't have to go look for him because I knew exactly where he was when he was yelling. So I said, David, I'm going to get coffee. He said, I'm going to go get Cokes. Cool. You go do that. And then I said, hey, here's the donuts. And he didn't want like the fresh donuts that had been brought in. He wanted the big bag of like those donuts and the chocolate ones. So I'm like, whatever you want, David. And then he picked up some weird flavors of like Coke and Dr. Pepper. It was like a tropical Coke and some cherry vanilla grape. I don't know what it was, but it looked disgusting. Okay. So he got his sodas. I got my coffee. We paid for it. And the most interesting thing that happened at QT is I bought a lottery ticket. And when I bought the lottery ticket, David said, I hope you have good luck. And then he prayed or he said something about St. Nicholas. And I was like, I'll take all the good luck I can get. Thank you, David. So he wasn't concerned with, oh, if you win, give me something. He was hoping that I would win just for me. So we get back in the car and I'm like, okay, David, we're going to go return your shoes. And then we're on our way to Metro Care. And he's like, okay, this man was eating these donuts. He was shoveling them in. And all I could think is, oh my gosh, he has chocolate all over his hands. And he is touching my seats. He is touching the sides of my car. I used to tell my kids when they were younger, stop touching my walls. Stop touching my walls, because they always had dirty hands. And so I was like, okay, God, just let me get through this, because I'm about to lose it with all the chocolate everywhere. And I just let him eat them. And I said, David, you sure like those chocolate donuts? And he said, I don't have a sugar problem. And I'm like, okay. I never said you had a sugar problem. I just said you really like those donuts. On our way to Walmart, we get to Walmart. David leaves his sodas and his donuts in the car. And remember, he walks with a cane. So on our drive to Walmart, though, I thought this was, it touched my heart so much. I am a big CeCe Winan fan. In fact, CeCe Winan has gotten me through some of the most trials and tribulations that I have been spending while going through my spiritual journey, my healing journey, my relationship with God. And I usually have her on my playlist. And so the song That's My King came on. And David dropped everything. Donut, everything, didn't care. And as soon as the verse came on, That's My King, David raised his hand and sang at the top of his lungs, That's my King. And it filled my car with joy and, oh man, and exuberance, life, and soul. It just made your heart flutter. So I'm like, that's right, David, that's right. And so we get into Walmart and, David walks with a cane. So I'm like, David, maybe you should get one of those carts that you can ride around in. He's like, okay. And there was two Hispanic ladies, and one was older, one was a little younger. And the older lady was trying to get into the cart, and she was having some issues, and it was taking her a little longer. And David, man, he was trying to be patient. He really was. But it was like a child going into a toy store and you said they can pick out anything they want. And then if you pulled their shirt back and said, you can't go till I let you go, like that child's legs just running. That's like what David was, right? He just wanted to go. So, I said, David, just hold on a second. They'll be fine. And David noticed that they were Hispanic, and David said, por favor, hurry, por favor. And I said, David, it's okay. We have time. Man, he was antsy, and he just sat there, and finally the ladies went on their way, and David got in his cart, and we go in the front door, and I said, David, can you just sit right here until I can return these shoes? No. I barely got that sentence out before David was gone. And all I heard in the back was, hi, how are you? Hi. Like, well, at least I'll be able to find him. So I returned the shoes, got the cash back, and now I'm on my way to go find David. Hi, how are you? So I knew he was somewhere in the shoe area. I walked back there and I said, David, did you find your shoes? And he said, yes. Held up his shoes, and they were sandals. I said, what? And he's like, yep, these are the ones I want. And so I was like, wait a minute. I've been reading the Bible a lot. I've been really praying a lot. I've been really focusing on God a lot. And I'd also been watching this show called The Chosen. Okay. So I was really into what Jesus had been wearing, what the disciples had been wearing. So when he picked out those sandals, I literally took a breath and said, is this Jesus? Did I pick up Jesus? Oh my God. Is this Jesus? And then of course, David snapped me out of it, right? He said, can I get a hat? And I'm like, yes, David, you can get a hat. So we get his hat. He picks out sunglasses. This man has whatever he needs for the elements and his sandals. We are on our way outside to go back to the car so I can take him to Metro Care. And as we're getting to the car, David said, I don't want to go. I said, what? He said, I don't want to go. And I said, David, I need you to roll back on over here and we need to have a talk. And he said, okay. So he rolled his little shopping cart over to me. And I said, David, what did you say? And he said, I don't want to go. And I said, but David, you know, this is as far as I can go. Now, for a fixer and for someone who finds their self-worth in serving others, this was the hardest sentence I had said. Because I didn't say, let me take you back to the hotel. I didn't say, let me find another place. I said, this is the furthest I can go with you. And at that point in my head, I knew that God had done work in me. Because no longer did I find myself worth in serving others. I found myself worth in what I knew I could do and how far I could go without losing myself. But I had made a connection to David, and I just wanted the best for him. So when I said to David, this is as far as I can go with you, he said, I know. And I said, David, are you sure? Are you sure? We can't just go to Metro Care, and if you don't like it, I'll bring you right back here. And he said, okay. And then I perked up, right? Because now I'm like, yes, we're going to Metro Care. I think I perked up for two reasons. One, he was going to get the help that I thought he needed. He didn't ask for help. He didn't ask for this. I thought he needed it. And it's what society tells us what's normal, right? And living on the street's not normal. Having mental health issues isn't normal. Sometimes believing in God isn't normal, right? Not sometimes, most of the time. So I was super excited, right? That he agreed to go. And then the second reason is because I really enjoyed him. He was a cool guy. And he made me laugh. He made me feel like I wasn't weird. He made me feel like I belonged. So I was going to miss him. But I knew I had to do it. So, he said he would go, but then a couple of seconds after he said, nope, not doing it. I said, okay, David, I'm not going to beg you to go. I'm going to let you go on your way. So I had it, my bag with all his stuff in it. And he said, can you take some of the waters out? It's too heavy. I said, sure. Man, my heart was broken. My heart was broken. But I knew this is what I had to do. I gave him his bag. He turns around. He doesn't go back into Walmart. He turns around to go behind my vehicle. And I yell at him, David, do you still have my phone number? And he said, yes. And I said, okay, call me if you need me. He said, okay. This is David when I left him that day. And by the way, we'll have all these pictures on the website as well. So you can listen to the stories and see these photos that we have. Just give us a little time. We're new at this. Okay. So, he walks back behind my car and I'm an emotional wreck, and I'm a fat kid and I feed my emotions with breakfast tacos. Okay. That's my main source of food, a good breakfast taco. So I put the directions into a place I wanted to go get a breakfast taco, and I look up and I see David walking behind me, and he walks with a cane, so he walks slow. So then I get a text, and I look at the text, I reply to the text, and I look up again, and there's no David. There's no David. And I'm like, wait, what? So I pull out and I go down each aisle in the parking lot, and there's no David. There's a little shopping center to the side. I go over there. There's no David. There was a group of men kind of huddled together by a car, and I thought, they being mean to David? They better not be being mean to David. And so I go over there to see if David's over there, and there's no David. There is no way David could have walked that parking lot. When I say he walked with a cane, he didn't just walk with a cane. He probably needed 2 canes to really make a good walk. He wasn't there. I go to the side of Walmart. He wasn't there. So I said, okay, God, I don't know where David is. Remember, inside Walmart, I thought David might have been Jesus. Maybe David was. I don't know. So I'm going to get my breakfast taco. There's nothing I can do, right? I'm emotionally spent. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I need a minute. And so I go around and go under the underpass. And there is a lady holding a sign. I said, no, I'm not. I think I may have said, no, to hell, I'm not. I'm not doing that. No, thank you. Done it. Bought the t-shirt. Not doing it again. I'm done. And then I feel this tug that I need to stop. Argued again. Not doing it. No, sir. I'm going to get a taco. The tug inside me was even harder. I know I went, fine. And I pulled over into a parking lot and I get a phone call. The person's like, hey, what are you doing? And I'm like, I got to go talk to another homeless person. And she's like, wait, what? Hasn't even heard the David story yet, so has no clue what I'm talking about. And I'm like, look, I don't have time to go into it, but God told me I have to go talk to this person, so that's what I'm going to go do. And she said, okay, well, listen, when you get back in your car, just let me know you're okay. I said, okay, whatever, cool. Looked down and realized David had left his weird flavored sodas and his donuts. Well, the few that were left of his donuts. I pick up the bag and I walk over. It was a little bit of a trek, and I walk over there and she's holding the sign and I said, hi. And she's like, hi, how are you? And I'm like, I'm good. How are you? And when I was walking over there, I noticed a young man that was in the same area as her, and he was sweeping the area that they slept, the area that they lived in under the bridge, taking such great care of it. And so he walked over, and I said, listen, I helped a homeless man named David, and he left these sodas in my car. And she's like, oh, Crazy David? I said, well, does Crazy David have a cane? And she said, oh, no. And I'm like, well, it's a different David then. And I gave her the sodas. She pulled out the weird flavors and said, this is my favorite flavor of Coke. And I'm like, you and David, two people in this whole world, that's their favorite flavor. How is it that I'm right here with your favorite flavored Coke? And then the big grand finale was fixing to happen, which is now I have to tell this person that God told me to give them this money. So I pulled the money out of my pocket, and it was the money that I got returned from returning David's shoes. And because he wanted the hat and the glasses, it cost a little more. So I had to swipe my card. I usually never have cash with me, ever. But because I had to do that, I now had cash with me. So I pulled it out of my pocket and I said, oh, here we go. Here we go. I said, well, Stephanie, God wanted me to give you this money. And she said, okay. And I looked at Ethan, and his eyes, he started to well up in tears. And he said, just 2 days ago, we sat here and had a 3-hour conversation about God. And here you are. And I said, Ethan, I was going to get a breakfast taco and God told me to stop. And I just obeyed. I just did what he said to do. And then I said, Ethan, why are you out here? And he said, well, I did some things I shouldn't have done. I spent some time in jail, got out of jail, and here I am. I said, Ethan, when's the last time you talked to your mom? And he said, her birthday was just yesterday. I said, Ethan, call your mom. Call your mom. People's hearts change. People change. People's minds change. Just call your mom. People change. I am living proof that people change in the way that we think. When our hearts are open, we change. Call your mom. And he said, I'm going to call her. I'm going to do it. And I asked Stephanie, why are you out here? Stephanie's story got me because Stephanie was her mom's caretaker. And she took care of her mom while she was sick. Man. And then after her mom passed away, there was no use for her. She did what she had to do, which was take care of her mom. And man, that story hit me because when my mom was sick, I took care of her. Ethan said, can I give you a hug? I said, of course you can give me a hug. In fact, I need it. I need it. So Ethan gave me a hug, and then Stephanie gave me a hug. And then I went on my way. I walked back to my car. And now I'm real emotional. And so now I really need that breakfast taco. So I go to the taco spot I was going to, and I turned into the wrong driveway. No big deal, because I was just going to make a turn and go the right way. So I make that turn, and as I am looking in my rearview mirror, and this picture is really cruddy. I hope you can see it. But when I looked in my rearview mirror, there was a man wearing a shirt with Jesus on it. And I said, God, stop playing with me. You're either telling me I'm on the right path, or you're telling me yes to the breakfast taco. I was hoping both were accurate. Both. I was hoping both were accurate. But I was still going for that breakfast taco. And I was so appreciative of these small signs that I was seeing, right? Because I'm new in my faith. So I get to the taco spot. I get my breakfast taco, and I go sit outside. And I'm sitting in a corner by myself. I just needed a minute by myself. And so I ate my taco, and I went back into the taco shop, and I said, let me get all the rest of your breakfast tacos. Because as I was eating my taco, something said to me, the people that you passed. Because as I was leaving Ethan and Stephanie, I turned around in a parking lot, and there was a camp of homeless people. And so when I'm eating my breakfast taco, something said to me, don't you think they would want a hot breakfast taco too? Yeah, they probably would. So I buy the rest of the tacos. There's like 10. And I ask for little brown bags and hot sauces and napkins. And I go out to my car, and I put breakfast tacos in each bag, and I put little messages. I've never done this in my life. And I put little messages. God loves you. God sees you. You are loved. All the things that I would want someone to say to me, I put it on those bags. And then I went back in that area. First place I hit was that parking lot that had the little homeless tents. Went back there, and the lady was cleaning up their area. Again, taking such care for the small things that they had. So I step out of my car, and I said, hey, you guys want some breakfast tacos? And she's like, yeah, we do. And I'm like, okay, how many people are here? And she's like, 3. I'm like, cool. Hand her the tacos, go on my way. Passed Stephanie and Ethan, gave them a wave, right? But I already helped them out. And so I knew that there were other people I needed to help. So behind Walgreens was 3 tents, like a little camp. So I parked behind there. And the first tent I came to was an elderly woman, and she had to have been in her late 70s. And I said, ma'am, do you want a breakfast taco? And she's like, yes, I would. And she's like, but can I get 2? Oh, of course you can get 2. Of course you can. She said, did you bring a Sprite, baby? And I'm like, why didn't I think of a Sprite? Why didn't I think of that? And I'm like, I don't have it, but the next time I come here, I will bring you a Sprite. She's like, that's all right, baby. That's all right. And so I'm like, but wait. David had me take waters out of his bag because they were too heavy. So here again, God provides again through David. So I gave her the waters, and then I said, let me go drop these tacos. And she said, listen, they're not there right now, but put them right in front of their little doors, and I'll make sure they know that they're there. I said, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And she said, no, we appreciate you. And man, I was so touched by that, because even out in this world, those of us that have more, we continue to want more. And rarely do we help those people who have less than us. But here is a woman living in a tent in a parking lot who didn't know where their next meal was going to come. She was going to make sure the people that were around her had what they needed. Why aren't we all like that? Why aren't we all like that? So I made my way around the little tents, dropped them off, and told her to have a great day. And I'm like, okay, I have one taco left, right? And I remember when I went over to see Ethan and Stephanie, there was a young man on the other side who had a watermelon, and he was busting it on the curb and then eating it. And I was like, I bet you he would like a breakfast taco. So I went around, and this time he was playing ball up the ramp of the bridge. So I came around and I said, hey, you want a breakfast taco? He's like, sure do. And he was so excited about that breakfast taco. He said, thank you, and God bless you. I said, all right, God, today's been a great day. My heart is full. My cup runneth over. And I was so full of love and joy. And I said, all right, I'm on my way home. Put it in my little GPS. I'm on my way. On my way home, I was stopped at a stoplight, and across the stoplight was a gentleman with a sign. And I said, but God, I don't have anything. I gave out all my tacos. I gave Stephanie and Ethan my cash. And then something reminded me that I had returned something and threw the money in the side door of my vehicle. I'm like, I don't know about that. So I removed everything, because that's my junk side, right? I put everything in there. And sure enough, was money folded together. Don't even know how much. Didn't even count it. Drove up because I had people behind me. And I handed him the money, and he said, God bless you. And I said, you too. And I drove off. I said, okay, God, thank you for that. Now my cup is really full, right? And I'm like, now I'm ready to go home. I have no money. I have no tacos. And I'm driving, right? To the right of me, I see another homeless gentleman. This time he's in a wheelchair. And he has a bandage on his foot, and he is scooting his wheelchair, right? It was slow, right? But as fast as he could go. And I'm like, God, do you want me to stop and push him? Like, I will. Is that what we're doing? I don't know. Is that what I'm supposed to do? And so I pulled into the gas station, and I'm like, God, I'll go into the gas station and use the ATM if that's what you want me to do, or I'll push him. What do you want me to do? And then something told me there was money in my wallet. And I carry a wallet it holds cards only. Usually I don't really carry cash with me ever. And something told me that there was cash in that wallet. And so I pulled out all the driver's license and the cards, and stuck in the very back was cash. And I'm like, okay, God, I see you. And I pulled out the cash, and I locked my door, and I came over and I said, hi, my name's Carrie, and God told me to stop. And he held out his hand. He said, my name's Michael. And I shook his hand. And I said, Michael, God wanted me to stop and give you this money. And he said, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah, Michael, God asked me to stop and give you this money. And so I handed him the money, and I said, Michael, where are you going? He said, I'm going to that taco shop over there. Did I not go to a taco shop and just pass out tacos? I said, Michael, I said, Michael, do you need me to push you over there? I'm more than happy to push you over there. He said, no, baby, I got it. I got it. Thank you for the money. And now I'm going to go buy me some tacos. Thank you. And he said, can I give you a hug? I said, of course, because now I really need a hug. So I gave him a hug and went about my way. I got in the car and I said, okay, God, I'm emotionally spent. I don't have any more money. Like, I'm looking in my pockets. I'm looking all around. I don't have any more money. Today's done for me. I'm done today. And as I drive home, I do not see one more person in need. But my heart, or let me say this, my cup runneth over. So I was emotionally spent from my day and I came home rested. But over the next couple of days, I told the David story because I just couldn't believe everything that happened. I couldn't believe all the events that happened after I left David at Walmart. And then I was talking on the phone to someone and telling them the David story, and they're like, oh, wow, look at all the Davids in your life. And then I started to look at all the Davids in my life. And I wish that I had written them down as I was thinking about them or as I came across, because I know I'm going to name some of them. And I know there's way more than this. But my first David that I realized is a David that is one of my very close friends that I grew up with. Her dad's name was David, and he's very much a part of my faithfulness in life, right? I've looked up to him because of that, because of his faith. And then I had David from the job interview who ended up being my systems director, and he was a man of faith. Or is a man of faith. And then David, the shaman that we went to at Oma's Cancun, the resort in Cancun, his name was David. And then I came across David, homeless David with the cane that I helped. And then when Stephanie mentioned Crazy David, and then I was at work one day and I was having to use a customer service rep, and I was online and we were chatting. And he said, my name is David. How can I help you? I said, stop playing with me. And then my soon-to-be daughter-in-law and I were at a restaurant. And this gentleman walks up to the table and he says, hi, my name is David. I'll be your waiter today. Stop it. When I wanted to start this podcast, I was doing interviews for podcast studios that I could go and do these things at. And I talked to a lady and we had a long conversation, and then she had another meeting coming in and she said, hey, listen, let me pass you off to my husband. He can finish this and he'll give you a tour. I'm like, great. And she said, David, his name was David. Then my soon-to-be daughter-in-law texted me and she said, hey, today I stopped and gave a homeless man money and he asked me what my name was. And I told him, my name's Rachel. And she said, what's your name? And I said, Rachel, if you tell me his name was David, I am coming to Houston to punch you in the face. And she went, ... David. Then some friends and I were on our way back from Florida. And man, I like my tea a certain way. And so for the whole week, I really haven't been able to get my iced tea the way that I like. So we happened to stop at a Chick-fil-A. And I went inside and I'm like, oh, I can get some tea. And so I'm standing at the counter and I gave my order and he's like, oh, great, I'll make your tea right now. I said, oh, you're going to be making it? And he said, yes. And I said, okay, listen, I hate to be a pain, but I've been gone all week and haven't had my tea the way I wanted it. Is there any way you can make it a special way? And he's like, well, it depends. And so I told him, I said, I like it 3/4 unsweet, 1/4 sweet. He's like, that's the same way I like my tea. I'm like, yes, I have hit the jackpot, right? And he made my tea and I took a drink of it. It was the most perfect tea I had had in a long time, including when I make it. And I said, oh, this tea is perfect. You are perfect. And he said, I know. And I looked at his name tag and it was kind of off to the side. And I said, what's your name? And his name tag said David. And at first I didn't ask for the receipt, but I had to after that because I knew the people that I had taken the trip with, they were not going to believe what just happened. And so I got out to the car and I'm like, gave him the receipt and I said, take a look at what it said. The name was, that helped me. And they both yelled out, David. And he said he was perfect. I was okay with that. So the last David that I have seen here recently, we were putting this little area together to do this podcast. And I was in Home Depot with one of my very best friends and she was ahead of me and I was pushing the cart and I had to yell at her and I said, please come back this way. And she said, she was really irritated at me that I made her walk all the way back. And I said, please, you're going to want to see this. And she's like, oh, okay. Because she was focused, right, on what she was doing. And she came back and I said, take a look at the wall. And it was a wood panel on an aisle at Home Depot. And I said, what does that say? And in cursive, it said, David. I said, I can't with this. Why would just a name on a wall in an aisle that we were at, why would that be there? And we laughed it off, called some people, let them know, saw another David, right? Because now it's happening all the time. And now it's becoming quite the joke. Got a David, saw a David, heard a David, whatever it may be, it's going to be a David. Also, let me say this because I did forget to include this one. My daughter's husband's name is David. What? So, for a long time, I had been praying to God, God, give me a heart of flesh. Take away this heart of stone and give me a heart of flesh. And although I was starting to feel things and I was starting to move different ways, this prayer had been the prayer I had been praying for so long. And, man, my last David sighting last week reminded me of King David. He was characterized by his faith, by his repentance, by his loyalty, by his praise, and by a deep desire to follow God. And these last months, man, that has been me. I remember the first David I mentioned, I wrote him and his wife a letter. And I thank them for being such a fantastic example of what it means to be rooted in your faith. What it means to love like God loves. Doesn't matter who you are, what you're going through, whether they agree with you or not. They've always showed kindness and love. And what a great example they were for me. And in part of the letter, I wrote something to the fact that the kingdom of heaven will always be within me. And I meant that. And I realized my heart had changed. I became anew. I never understood what that meant. But I prayed. I prayed daily, all day, for a new heart. And God gave that to me. I now have a heart and desire similar to David. I am forever rooted in my faith and my love for God. Nothing, no one can ever change my love, my faith, and my desire to serve and be of service to God. I am so grateful for the day I met David. And I am so grateful for all the Davids I have had in my life to show me I have a heart like David. Join me next Wednesday, October 1st, as I talk about how God healed me of my childhood wounds and my trauma from being abandoned as a teen. As always, thank you so much for joining in to Holy Chuckles Podcast.